And that kind of led me down the path to eventually thinking about what other side projects I could work on, maybe turn one of those things into a full-time startup maybe one day. Very luckily, the very first thing that I worked on was Zapier with my two co-founders, Brian and Wade. The writing's on the wall for how that turned out. So I think that ended up, I got very lucky that the very first thing that I worked on, that kind of game plan, worked as well as it did.
Who has used Zapier in the past or has ever heard of Zapier?
All right, we'll change that today.
Okay, awesome. So Mike, do you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself and as well as a brief introduction of what Zapier does?
Yeah, so my name's Mike Knoop. I founded Zapier, which I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, Zapier.
So Zapier, kind of our mission at Zapier is to kind of democratize automation. Zapier is a tool that allows you to connect together tools that you use to run your business. And this is not a new space. Automation's been around since the 80s, the 90s, but it's usually been kind of locked in the hands of folks in IT, folks who know how to code, business leadership. And the kind of goal of the company was, how can we give that power to more and more people? Everyone in this room, for example, could probably log in, and it's a tool that's designed for non-technical folks to be able to connect these tools together. You actually have problems connecting in day to day just to get your job and run your companies and things like that. One of the co-founders and the third co-founder, I was the chief product officer for the first 8 years of the company's life. About a year ago, decided to fire myself and hire a new CPO to take over my responsibilities. And today I run Zapier Labs, which primarily focuses on kind of a longer time horizon. So kind of working out ahead of the product organization that we've got today to try and figure out what is kind of future value we can create for Zapier customers over a longer time horizon. So that's a little bit about me and Zapier.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely wanted to dive into the business aspect later, but want to focus more on right now, sort of your personal journey. So can you talk more about, I know you went to the University of Missouri. Did you grow up in the Midwest? Or can you talk a little bit about sort of, the family environment as well as how you grew up? Were you always, working on startups? Were you interested in businesses? And then how did you, how did you spend your time at college?
Yeah, good question. So I got to rewind the clock here. So growing up, I was always into building stuff. I actually thought I wanted to be an architect, like a house architect for a long time growing up. And then I got into high school and I took some of these art classes, prereq classes, and I was terrible at actually drawing things on paper. So I realized, oh, that's not the path I'm going to go down. Funny enough, the whole industry changes. Everyone uses software now, so I think I could maybe do it. But at the time, that was kind of my disqualifying event for myself. But I always like building stuff. I have been coding since I was in elementary school. I wrote a bunch of if you're all familiar with graphic calculators, I built a bunch of the games that maybe some of you have even played in middle school and high school. Built a couple of side projects just on the side to hone my skills. And then in high school, I was trying to decide what do I want to actually do, I guess, with your life, because high schoolers should know what they want to do with their life, which I totally don't buy. I figured I liked this coding thing so much, and I liked this building thing so much. I was really worried that if I went and did computer science in college, that I would kind of burn out on it. I was worried that there'd be this rigorous curriculum that I'd have to follow. There'd be tons of homework and tests, and I hated that kind of stuff in school. I was not a 4.0 student like that. I cared a lot more about the things that I did outside of school in my own time than I cared about this formal, rigid structure. And I think that it resonates a lot with folks probably here in this room, other entrepreneurs, folks building companies. You're kind of not doing the standard path that's laid out for you, right? So I was really worried that if I went and did the standard path for computer science, I would just get burned out on it. It would not be fun for me. So I decided to do something completely different. I decided to study mechanical engineering and go down that path. And a couple years into college, I realized there's actually kind of a way to blend those two things together. There's actually quite a bit of software that was starting to be used in hard engineering fields. In mechanical engineering specifically, you write a lot of optimization code. There's a lot of finite element analysis where you're actually writing Fortran still, which is kind of crazy to me. So I found this way to blend what I was interested in with this other kind of path that I had chosen. Doing a lot of freelancing also in college. That was how I made my money, how I made my beer money and bought my laptop for stuff, is just doing PHP freelancing basically on the side. I still remember there was this one specific job I did. I was doing like $50 an hour, coding or whatever for freelance clients. And I'm a big follower of Patrick McKenzie and this start small, stay small stuff. And I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can charge like a higher amount and see if I can actually make, this. See if I can make freelancing, support me full time as opposed to just kind of, side money and expendable cash. So I had this one project where somebody pitched me. I think it was building like this like social media monitor thing where you could put like tweets and Instagram photos up on a wall at like big events and stuff. And I knew I could build in like a weekend. But I went back and I said, I'll do it for $5,000. Like knowing that this is going to take me like probably 10 hours. Normally my hourly rate, that would be like, maybe several $100s. And they came back and said, sure, that sounds reasonable. And I was like, holy shit, like that's amazing. Like I can't believe that my skill set was like worth that much value. So I did it, used that money to buy like a top-end laptop and had a bit of fun with that. But that was kind of one of the first moments where I realized, whoa, I don't necessarily think I want to follow this like kind of traditional go get a big engineering job at like a big software engineering job at a big company. And that kind of led me down the path to eventually thinking about what other side projects I could work on, maybe turn one of those things into a full-time startup maybe one day. I still remember, this is mid-Missouri, so still remember thinking like, I'd never been to California before, even at this point. I remember thinking maybe one day I'll go out to California and attend like a conference maybe. So like, still clearly not in that headspace at all. Towards the end of college, I was doing some research through the grad program, like you'd mentioned, spun some of my work that I'd done in undergrad into this grad program and got basically a stipend to live on it for 2 years if I kept doing research. And my kind of game plan was, well, this stipend is paying for like cheap housing in a college town. It's paying for my food. It's not much more than that, but it's enough to survive. So I'll just keep working on these software, side projects, maybe side businesses that I had in mind. And if one of them can spin up into a full-time company, I'll drop out of school and go do that. Very luckily, the very first thing that I worked on was Zapier with my two co-founders, Brian and Wade. The writing's on the wall for how that turned out. So I think that I got very lucky that the very first thing that I worked on and that kind of game plan worked as well as it did.
Yeah, awesome. And so I want to rewind for a second and go back to, you mentioned Patrick McKenzie. So growing up and into like your early startup journey, sort of who were sort of the mentors or maybe people that guided your business in making decisions and also principles that you instilled into life as well as business early on?
That's a good question. Certainly my like answers on this have changed over the years, I think. Like, I think when I look at mentors, I don't look at a single person as like a holistic mentor to say like, I'm going to try and copy that person. I think you kind of can't do that. If you look at one person and say, I'm going to do literally everything they do, it's not going to be authentic. You're not going to be bringing yourself. You're literally just cloning them. What I've done more recently is I've just had the opportunity to meet so many different individuals, having run a pretty successful software company, that I can figure out, or I can start learning like, okay, I really like this aspect of this individual. I really like this other aspect of this other individual. For example, like Greg Brockman, former Stripe CTO, now at OpenAI, almost one of the best writers that I know about in written communication. And written communication is so important for a remote company. I love having like a high bar to aspire to there. Someone like Sam Altman, I really respect his ability to like in a verbal format to be able to simply communicate an idea down into something that is very tangible and very clear. Again, aspirational there. You look at somebody like the Collison brothers over at Stripe and their ability to run like I think one of the most professional companies and actually make really good future investments in what the future of Stripe's going to look like. I think they do that better than anyone else today. In the early days, though, when we were just getting started, I didn't know any of those people. So what the network that I had was I didn't have a professional network in Missouri. None of us did. So it was mostly through who I could follow online, who I saw writing about startups, who I saw writing about like small companies, like this area that I thought was very tractable to me as like somebody in the Midwest who didn't have any of these other advantages that someone in the Bay Area coast might have. So Rob Walling had wrote this book, Start Small, Stay Small, which basically was like start these like small software projects, and it's okay if it never blows up and gets huge. Like you can create a huge, great lifestyle around just a bunch of a suite or a category of maybe 4 or 5 different small micro apps that you build and have like niche value. Similar with Patrick McKenzie, he'd built a bingo card creator and had grown it basically on the back of like, search and SEO to find this niche market that to sell bingo card software to teachers and like was making a living on doing that. So those were kind of the inspirational stories that I got started with and kind of said, hey, that's like a path I can follow because I don't need anyone's permission to do those things. I don't have to go convince investors in the Valley. Like I knew that I couldn't do that. I didn't have the resume, I didn't have the network, I didn't have any of those things. So finding people who were telling me that I didn't need permission to like kind of go this own path was like really powerful for me in the early days. And then, like I said, as Zapier's grown, I've been able to get in touch with just a lot more folks who've run successful companies and just see, okay, what are the like values and how do they operate that I might want to emulate as like the company is growing.